It started on a Thursday night in late November, when the world outside was hushed under a blanket of cold wind and skeletal tree branches clawing at the windows. I had been living alone in my parents' old house for about 3 months while they were away abroad. The house was large, too large for a single person, with creaking wooden floors and narrow corridors that seemed to stretch longer in the dark than they ever did in the daylight. That evening, I was curled up on the couch in the living room, reading a book, when I heard it, a faint tapping sound coming from the second floor. At first, I dismissed it as the wind rattling something loose, but as I paused and listened, the sound became deliberate. 3 distinct knocks, evenly spaced, as though someone wanted me to notice. My chest tightened. I set the book down and held my breath. The house was old, yes, but it never made sounds like that. Forcing myself to stay calm, I decided to check. Step by step, I climbed the staircase, each creak of the wooden steps echoing too loudly in the silence. At the top, the hallway stretched into darkness, the overhead bulb flickering weakly. My parents' bedroom door, which I was sure I had left shut earlier, now stood half open. I froze. The air felt heavier, colder, as if someone was standing in that dark gap watching me. I whispered, "Hello?" to break the silence, but only the faint whistle of wind answered back. I shut the door quickly, forcing myself not to look into the shadows beyond, and hurried back downstairs. I tried to shake it off, an old house playing tricks, my imagination running wild, but deep down, I knew the house was no longer mine alone. The next few days followed with subtle disturbances, each one impossible to ignore. It began with misplaced items. My keys left on the counter would reappear on the floor by the door. Cups would vanish from the kitchen, only to be found in the hallway. At night, I would hear faint footsteps pacing above me in the second floor corridor, slow and dragging, as though someone was circling endlessly. Every time I built the courage to check, I found nothing. The air upstairs, however, was always freezing compared to the rest of the house, like the warmth refused to touch that floor. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Even when I managed to drift off, I would wake to the feeling of being watched, my eyes snapping open to find the dark corners of my room thicker, heavier than they should be. One night, I awoke to the sound of my bedroom door handle slowly turning. My heart pounded against my ribs as I stared, paralyzed at the shadowy silhouette of the knob twitching under an unseen hand. The door never opened, but the message was clear. I wasn't alone, and whatever it was wanted me to know it had access to me whenever it wanted. I started keeping the hallway light on at night, but even the light didn't chase away the presence. The shadows seemed to cling to it, twisting unnaturally, refusing to obey. I told myself I was imagining things, but every part of me knew something had taken residence in the house, something that fed on the silence, on my growing fear. By the second week, the house no longer felt like my home. It was a stage, and I was the unwilling actor performing under the scrutiny of an unseen audience. That's when the whispers began. The first time I heard it, I was brushing my teeth late at night. Over the sound of running water, a voice hissed my name, so faint it might have been mistaken for wind. I froze, toothpaste dripping from my mouth, and stared into the mirror. For a split second, I swore there was a figure standing behind me, a pale blur in the corner of the reflection. But when I spun around, the bathroom was empty. I shut the water off and listened. The silence pressed against my ears until the whisper returned, closer this time, right by my ear. "Leave." The breath was icy, brushing against the skin of my neck. I stumbled out of the bathroom, my heart in my throat, and slept on the couch with every light blazing. After that, the whispers followed me wherever I went in the house. Sometimes they said my name, other times they hissed words I couldn't fully understand, distorted like a bad radio signal.
They grew bolder when I was alone in the kitchen or walking the halls, curling out of the walls, the ceilings, the air itself. Each whisper carried intent, not random noise, but communication, layered with malice. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I thought about leaving, staying in a hotel, but some part of me felt if I abandoned the house, I would never truly escape it. The thing had chosen me, marked me, and running would only give it strength.
The breaking point came on a stormy night when rain lashed against the windows and the wind howled through the trees like a chorus of mourners. I had tried to drown out the sounds of the house by turning on the television, but midway through the news broadcast, the screen flickered, turned to static, and then shut off entirely. The room plunged into silence, broken only by the storm outside. Then came the footsteps, loud, deliberate, pounding down the upstairs hallway. I shot up, my pulse racing, and grabbed a flashlight. Every instinct told me not to go up there, but I couldn't stand another night of retreating. Slowly, I ascended the staircase. The beam of the flashlight shook in my trembling hands, illuminating the hallway walls where the wallpaper seemed to ripple like water. The footsteps stopped just as I reached the landing, replaced by a low, guttural breathing that echoed in the air around me. The sound came from my parents' bedroom, the one I had shut firmly days ago. Summoning every ounce of courage, I pushed the door open. The room was pitch black, but as my flashlight beam cut through the dark, I saw them. Shadows. Dozens of human-like silhouettes clung to the walls and ceiling, stretching unnaturally long, their edges writhing as though alive. My breath caught in my throat as one of the shadows detached itself from the wall and stood in the middle of the room. It was taller than any person I'd ever seen, faceless, but its head cocked as if it were staring at me. My flashlight flickered, the beam weakening, and then, as though responding to my fear, the shadow began to move toward me. I stumbled back, slamming the door shut behind me, but the sound of heavy, deliberate footsteps followed. The air grew thick, suffocating, as if the house itself was closing in on me. I bolted down the stairs, my heart hammering, and reached the living room just as the lights flickered violently. A sudden crash echoed from the kitchen, plates shattering across the floor, deep scratches carved into the wooden walls as though claws had raked them in fury. I screamed for it to stop, my voice breaking, but the chaos only grew louder. And then, silence. The silence was worse. I turned slowly, and there it was, in the corner of the room, barely visible, a figure standing in the shadows. Its body was indistinct, melting into the darkness, but its eyes glowed faintly white, fixed on me with an intensity that made my knees buckle. The whispers began again, louder now, all around me, overlapping, incomprehensible, until they merged into a roar. My body froze, paralyzed, as the figure drifted closer, each step soundless. My flashlight slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor, and the room went black. The last thing I felt was a hand, ice cold, skeletal, pressing against my chest. I couldn't breathe. My vision swam, the world spinning into blackness, until I collapsed unconscious on the floor. When I woke, it was morning. The storm had passed, and sunlight filtered through the curtains, bathing the room in warmth. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. But as I sat up, the truth revealed itself. Every cabinet in the kitchen stood wide open, dishes shattered across the floor, deep scratches carved into the wooden walls as though claws had raked them in fury. My chest ached where the hand had pressed, a bruise already blooming across my skin in the shape of long, thin fingers. I left the house that very day, taking nothing but a backpack of clothes. I stayed with a friend for weeks, unable to step foot inside again. When my parents returned, I told them everything,
but they dismissed it as stress and overactive imagination. Yet the bruise remained, proof etched into my skin. To this day, I don't know what it was that haunted that house, but I know this: it wasn't just a ghost. It was something older, something that fed on fear, and it had chosen me as its prey. Even now, years later, I sometimes wake in the middle of the night to the faint sound of footsteps pacing outside my bedroom door. And every time, I'm reminded that the house never let me go. It's still watching, waiting, silent in the dark.